My name is Abby, and I've made a horrible error.
So, turns out in the first video, she had stated that the previous owner of the vehicle is no longer with us, or it could have been an estate sale, which we thought it was. But I was able to track down a phone number that works for the previous owners, and I was able to talk to them. So, it's been about a week. I called and left a message. They called me back, and they were willing to talk about the car, just about the history. I wanted to get the background on it because you don't own a car for 30 something years that you don't have a story to. I love a good car story. So I wanted to know the story behind this car. So I spoke with the lady. She's 94 years old. The gentleman is 97 years old, and he can't hear anything. So we were kind of talking through her as we're going through the conversation. She said, yes, this was our car. I explained to her what our plans were. She's very happy that we got it. It seemed like it made their day. They really did love this car. It started life off as they bought it for their daughter while she was working in Germany. She picked it up new at Munich, drove it around Europe for 2 years, and then when the daughter transferred back to the States, she brought the car with her. And from there, it was the gentleman's car in Southern California. It lived in Monterey, San Diego. It was in Reno once, according to the service records.
How long was it in Europe?
2 years?
2 years?
Yeah, 2 years. So it spent 2 years in tooling around Europe. In the manual, we'll try and cut to a shot of this, but it has the dealer stickers, the dealer stamps of where it got its first oil changes. Speaking of oil changes, the gentleman, his memory was, they told me immediately, his memory is in and out. At 97 years old, I wouldn't be lucid. So the first thing he wanted to tell me about was he always did the oil changes on this car. He was super serious about it. He would let the oil drain overnight to make sure it got all the old oil out. Now he is German. They have a very thick German accent. So he was telling me how to do the oil changes on his car. He kept referring to it as his car. That was really cute. And he would tell me, the reason they got rid of it is because he can't drive it anymore. I mean, at 97 years old, the car had sat for, I think, the past like 5 years, maybe a couple hundred miles on it past 5 years, because they were chasing down some issues, which we'll get into later.
You hear it?
He told me, he's like, I guess you bought it from the auction. I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, we just gave it up because I couldn't drive it anymore. So that was super sad, but he was excited to hear that she's going through the project of refurbishing it, getting it back to as close to new condition as possible. So we went over the oil changes. He passed me back to his wife, kind of say our goodbyes, and I told him I'll send you some pictures and keep you updated on it. And then he remembered something else he wanted to tell me. So again, he can't hear very well, so he's very much talking at me. And I can't respond to him, so I just let him go. He was telling me about the electrical drain issue in this. He said, you drive it one day, it's good for the next day. You leave it 2 days sitting, it'll be good to drive. 3 days, won't drive. He's like, there's a very small power drain in one of the either interior lights or the exterior lights. I'm not sure which one anymore. I think it was the interior lights. He said left-hand side interior. He said if you have all the lights off, you can barely see it. So I guess they were tracing that down.
I'm suspecting that it's more than that, because if the car sits for like 6 hours, she's dead. Won't turn on.
Yeah, I'm not sure if their troubleshooting to try and fix that issue might have caused more issues.
Yeah, and clearly they were trying to troubleshoot just by the condition of the wiring in the engine bay.
It was the car was loved. Obviously they loved this car, it meant a lot to them, but you can tell that the maintenance was just to keep it going. It wasn't preventative, it wasn't, okay, let's get ahead of this issue. It was just, let's keep it going as much as we can, especially towards the end of their ownership of it, where they said it just sat in the garage for like basically the past 5 to 6 years, barely ran. Like they would barely run it. So it does run, as you've seen. I'm interested to see once we get the valve cover off and see what the condition is there.
Yeah. But first thing I want to do is find out where the electrical drains are happening, assuming there are multiple, and figured that would be a good starting point for getting the electrical system back to OEM and back to looking good and back to not draining again, so that way I don't have to disconnect the battery every time it's powered on.
And get rid of the couple taps in the headlights. I'm assuming that was part of their troubleshooting, was just let's make a quick connection here to rule these out, but they never really finished it.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so I'm testing for an electrical draw. I have my meter set to 10 amps, cable plugged into the 10 amp side, set to DC voltage. So now these are going to be connected in series between the negative terminal of the battery and the negative cable that's normally connected to the battery. Negative is off right now, positive is connected, battery is charged.
I'm pulling the fuses one by one, and if I see the amp draw drop, then I know that whatever fuse I've pulled is the source or a source of my electrical draw. So I'm just going to go through these one by one and just keep an eye on my tester the whole time.
Oh, that was one.
That's it?
That's one, because there's still a draw. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One in is fuse number 21. So my test did reveal a draw on the inside of the vehicle. Fuse 21 are the interior lights. So I tore apart the dash, since the previous owner mentioned that it was on the driver's side of the car that he had noticed the draw before. Well, got a bunch of wires that were cut and taped off. This one, they tried to share a piece of duct tape to seal them off, and the duct tape has since petrified. So I suspect this to be the culprit. I'm going to consult my 1985 BMW 635 CSI electrical troubleshooting manual. 106 pages of doom.
So while I figure out what to do with all my electrical issues, I'm going to get started pulling off my intake so I can get access to the valve cover, so I can start diagnosing the misfire that I'm having. I guess that kind of counts as an electrical issue.
Is that oil? Yes, it is.
And oil leak issues, I guess.
That is all full of sludge. Yarp. Oh, Jesus. When in doubt, just cap it off, I guess. Also, when in doubt, Just toss a damn screw in it. It seems watertight. Jesus Christ. Ooh, don't fall. Here. Are you gonna be a good hose and come out, you bitch? I win. First part of the header here. Missing the bolt. Well, I guess the stud. Looks like it broke off.
So I found something very interesting here. Remember that blue cap that I pointed to earlier saying when in doubt, just cap it off? Well, I'm fairly certain that's supposed to be a vent hose that's supposed to go to the bottom of the intake manifold here. But instead, someone just cut that hose short, so now all the oil that's pooling in the bottom of the intake manifold is dripping all over my subframe. So that's a source of at least one oil leak that I found on the bottom of the car, and why some of it's just coated in oil down there. So now I'm going to get started diagnosing the misfire. So I'm going to get started on that by pulling the wires for cylinders 2 and 6, and I'm going to check the resistance in both and compare them to new wires. While I'm at it, I'm also going to change the spark plugs, because why not? So I'm checking the resistance of a new wire and comparing it to the old. If the values are the same, then my existing wires are fine.
So these wires are both totally fine, which now means I'm gonna have to pull off the distributor cap and check that and the rotor, because more than likely my issue is in here. It's definitely not with the wires. No oil. I would say this is probably my culprit. The contact points look pretty worn. So you can see some points look more worn than others, like these two compared to one another. So the rotor itself looks pretty decent. There's no oil, which I'm really happy about. Not super worn, so looks like my culprit is the distributor cap. Just worn contact points. Should be an easy fix. So now I'm going to yank off the valve cover and do a valve adjustment. So for a car that's a little older than I am, the engine is, or at least the valve train, what I can see anyway, appears to be in pretty good shape. It's a single cam, which is still weird for me to look at. But the lobes are all clean. I don't see any pitting. Very little wear. I'm quite pleased. In case you find yourself doing this job and you don't have a way of telling when the cam lobes are in the correct position, so you always want them to be on the round side, the circular side, touching the arm here, touching the rocker arm. Now, firing order of, I think, all 6-cylinder BMW motors is 153624. So right now I'm adjusting cylinder 2. So the corresponding cylinder to that would be on the opposite end of the firing order is cylinder 5. So when cylinder 2 is in the correct position with the cam lobes facing down, cylinder 5 is going to have the cam lobes facing up. And with this oil feed line, an easy way to tell is the oil feed line is going to bisect those lobes kind of like at a V. So when your lobes are facing here and here, your oil feed line is going to go right in between. So when cylinder 5 is looking like that, it's time to adjust cylinder 2. And I'd already done cylinder 1, but when cylinder 1 was ready to be adjusted, the cylinder 6 lobes would be facing up like this. Done.
But I did suffer 2 casualties. RIP, boys.